Step into the ancient corridors of Jerusalem, where the intriguing tale of Caiaphas unfolds, a man cloaked in religious authority and political sway. Also known as Joseph ben Caiaphas, he ascended to the esteemed position of high priest from 18 to 36 AD, navigating the complex landscape under the Roman governor Pontius Pilate. This isn't merely a historical account. It's a captivating narrative, intricately interwoven with the fabric of the New Testament. Caiaphas takes center stage in the gospel narratives of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, scripting a drama that climaxes with the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. Yet, the story delves deeper, raising tantalizing questions about Caiaphas's motivations. Why did he, with chilling precision, play a pivotal role in the trial of Jesus? What drove him to spin a web of falsehoods against an innocent man? These are the queries that resonate through time, urging us to unravel the mysteries surrounding the controversial legacy of this high priest. Envision this enigmatic figure, surrounded by a council falling short of the revered number 71, a vital prerequisite for the official proceedings of the Sanhedrin. Why did he brazenly flout tradition, conducting a secretive trial within the confines of his own residence? And in a bizarre twist, why did he unleash an angry mob on Jesus, seemingly devoid of reason or justice? As we embark on this enthralling journey, we'll peel away the layers of intrigue, delving into the depths of Caiaphas's involvement in the trial and execution of Jesus. Stay tuned, and within a few short minutes, the pieces of this historical puzzle will begin to coalesce. Before we plunge into the mysteries of Caiaphas and his role in the crucifixion, I encourage you to connect with this content by liking and subscribing to our channel. Now let's dive into it. Joseph ben Caiaphas, or Caiaphas the high priest of ancient Judea, held the distinguished position of high priest during the pivotal years of Jesus' ministry. Born around 14 BC and passing away circa 46 AD, Caiaphas left an unforgettable mark on history, as chronicled in the New Testament and the works of the esteemed historian Josephus. Caiaphas' rise to power unfolded against the backdrop of Roman rule, a period marked by delicate political maneuvering. According to Josephus, Caiaphas assumed the role of the high priest in AD 18, a position bestowed upon him by the Roman prefect Valerius Gratus. This appointment followed the deposition of Simon ben Camillus, showcasing the intricate web of Roman influence in the selection of Judea's high priest. Caiaphas's tenure as high priest spanned an unprecedented length, ruling longer than any of his contemporaries in New Testament times. His ability to maintain this position for nearly 2 decades suggested a skillful navigation of the complexities inherent in the intersection of religious authority and Roman governance. The central inquiry we must address is the motivation behind Caiaphas and the religious leaders' desire to eliminate Jesus. It's pivotal to understand that Jesus' very purpose on earth was predetermined. He was destined to sacrifice himself to redeem humanity, a truth embedded within the New Testament. While he was acutely aware of the specifics surrounding his imminent sacrifice, including its timing and those involved, Jesus forewarned of betrayal. As elucidated in the Gospel of Mark 14:21, New International Version, he declares, "The Son of Man will go, just as it is written about him. But woe to that man who betrays the Son of Man. It would be better for him if he had not been born." This poignant proclamation serves as a dire warning against the impending treachery, emphasizing the grave consequences for the betrayer. However, the intricate dynamics of the situation meant that those plotting against Jesus remained oblivious to his true identity. While Jesus' teachings and actions undoubtedly unsettled the Sanhedrin, led by Caiaphas, they had not encountered him in his adult form, making recognition elusive. Their quest for clarity led them to seek an insider, someone familiar with Jesus, to identify him. Enter Judas Iscariot, who, despite his proximity to Jesus, grappled with personal weaknesses, notably an insatiable greed for money. Misguided by prevailing expectations of the Messiah as a militant leader poised to overthrow Roman rule, Judas misunderstood Jesus' spiritual teachings. He misconstrued profound declarations like, "I am the way, the truth, and the light," as veiled promises of a coup or military uprising. Consequently, when Caiaphas and the religious elite sought Jesus' arrest, Judas, driven by his distorted perceptions and greed, became the conduit. Disenchanted by the absence of the anticipated military revolt against Roman occupation, Judas succumbed to temptation, betraying Jesus for monetary gain. His infamous act of betrayal materialized with a deceitful kiss, signaling to the religious leaders that Jesus was amidst his disciples. Seizing this moment, they apprehended Jesus, ushering him to Caiaphas' residence, setting the stage for the ensuing events that would forever alter the course of history. Contrary to established customs, Jesus, following his arrest by the temple guards, diverged from the standard protocol that would have seen him confined to the temple stockade until the convening of the complete Sanhedrin or priestly council. This departure from the norm becomes even more conspicuous when compared to the treatment meted out to individuals such as Peter, John, and other apostles during their arrests, Acts 4:3, 5:17, who were subjected to the expected procedure. In an unusual twist, Jesus found himself transported directly to the Jerusalem residence of the high priest, Joseph Caiaphas. This deviation from the customary course of action raised eyebrows for several reasons. Firstly, it occurred on the eve of Passover, a sacred night in the Jewish liturgical calendar, typically reserved for the high priest and priestly officials to partake in festivities with their families rather than engaging in the adjudication of a case involving a Galilean rabbi. Secondly, while Caiaphas' residence was likely opulent, the practical constraints of space made it improbable that it could accommodate the entire quorum of 71 Sanhedrin members, especially considering the impromptu nature of the summons. The expeditious indictment of Jesus, as narrated in Mark's account and subsequently reflected in all Gospels, unfolded in the shadows of secrecy. This covert setting implies Caiaphas' eagerness to swiftly conclude Jesus' case and do so discreetly, even in the absence of the full Sanhedrin. The clandestine nature of these proceedings during the night suggests a deliberate effort to expedite the process and make decisions behind closed doors, deviating significantly from established norms. So, according to John's account, Jesus initially faced questioning from Annas, Caiaphas' father-in-law and a former high priest, who held considerable authority on religious matters as the patriarch of the Annas family. Following a concise inquiry, Jesus was then directed to Caiaphas, John 18:13-24. At that time, Caiaphas had been the high priest for about 12 years, taking over from his brother-in-law, Eleazar ben Ananus. But here's the tricky part. Caiaphas couldn't unilaterally decide to punish Jesus. He needed the approval of the Sanhedrin, a group of important religious leaders. If they didn't agree, Caiaphas couldn't just order trouble for Jesus. So Caiaphas faced a predicament. If the Sanhedrin didn't give the green light, he could consider seeking help from the Roman government. However, that would be a significant move because historically, the Sanhedrin liked to handle their own affairs without interference from the Romans. And there was another challenge. Jesus was only accused of causing a stir and maybe saying things about God in the temple that some didn't like. But these charges weren't grave enough for the Romans to get involved or for someone to face the death penalty. Therefore, Caiaphas had to navigate this complex situation and decide the best course of action. To make matters worse, the indictment hearing, as described by Mark, did not go according to plan. The various eyewitnesses did not agree. "We heard him say," said one, "I will destroy this temple that is made with hands, and in 3 days I will build another, not made with hands." Mark 14:58. Inflammatory rhetoric perhaps, but hardly grounds for prosecution, because countless prophets in Hebrew scripture had said the same thing, warning that the Jerusalem temple would face imminent destruction. Caiaphas then tried a different tack and asked Jesus flat out, "Are you the Messiah?" According to Mark, Jesus replied, "I am," and then cited from the book of Daniel and the Psalms, "You will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of the power and coming with the clouds of heaven." Psalms 110:1, Daniel 7:13-14. This is what Caiaphas needed to hear. He knew that the Romans had no interest in the minutiae of Jewish exegesis, but words like "the right hand of the power" would get their attention. The high priest tore his clothes and said, "Why do we still need witnesses?" In his view, Jesus had incriminated himself. But secretly, these were his core reasons why he wanted to kill Jesus, and also not any other way other than crucifixion, which was a slow way of dying in pain, yet very disgraceful. First, the claims that he made. Second, the deeds that he did. Third, his threat to their religious system. Fourth, his threat to their way of life. Fifth, the people with whom he socialized. And lastly, the lack of respect he had for their religious traditions. These 6 things caused outrage among the religious rulers. Consequently, they wanted to see Jesus dead once and for all. You see, when Jesus declared himself to be the Messiah, it implied that his authority was greater than that of the religious leaders. They couldn't accept this because it challenged their position and power. The religious leaders, including rulers and Pharisees, rejected Jesus' claims, and this rejection fueled their anger. They questioned, have any of the rulers or the Pharisees believed in him? But this crowd that does not know the law is accursed. John 7:48 and 49. The religious leaders dismissed the belief of the common people, considering it to be rooted in ignorance. However, the growing attention and following that Jesus garnered exposed the leaders' deep-seated feelings of hatred and jealousy. Their jealousy stemmed from the threat posed by Jesus' authority, which overshadowed their own. This intense jealousy fueled their desire to see Jesus eliminated, as his claims directly challenged their standing and influence among the people. The deeds of Jesus also angered the religious leaders. After seeing Jesus heal a demon-possessed man, some of the multitude questioned if Jesus could be the Messiah, and some of the multitudes were amazed and said, "Could this be the son of David, the Messiah?" But when the Pharisees heard it, they said, "This fellow does not cast out demons except by Beelzebub, the ruler of the demons." Matthew 12:23-24. The miracle was undeniable, for the man was blind and mute, as well as demon-possessed. Rather than believing Jesus to be the Messiah, these religious rulers attributed Jesus' power to the devil. Thus their official explanation was that Jesus' power came from Satan. This was another cause for which they wanted him dead. Jesus was also a threat to their religious system. He pointed out the hypocrisy that was connected with their practice. The Bible records that on 2 different occasions, he came into the temple precincts and drove out the money changers. The Passover of the Jews was near, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem, and he found in the temple those who were selling oxen and sheep and doves, and the money changers seated at their tables. And he made a scourge of cords and drove them all out of the temple, with the sheep and the oxen, and he poured out the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. and to those who were selling the doves, he said, "Take these things away. Stop making my Father's house a place of business." His disciples remembered that it was written, "Zeal for your house will consume me." John 2:13-17. The political landscape during Jesus' time added a layer of complexity to the religious leaders' motivations. The region was marked by tension between the Jewish community and Roman authorities. The prospect of a Messiah, often associated with a liberator who could lead a revolt against Roman rule, heightened the anxiety among the religious leaders. The prevailing unrest and the yearning for independence fueled the imagination of the Jewish populace, longing for a leader who would free them from Roman oppression. However, Jesus' teachings didn't align with the conventional expectation of a militant Messiah. Instead of advocating armed resistance, he preached a spiritual kingdom, challenging the conventional understanding of a political uprising. This incongruence between popular expectations and Jesus' peaceful message created a dilemma for the religious leaders. Their concern extended beyond religious matters to the political implications of Jesus' influence. The fear of potential Roman reprisals and the disruption of their existing way of life intensified their resolve to eliminate Jesus, who, albeit inadvertently, represented a challenge to the delicate political balance of the time. The religious leaders of the time held a firm grip on a multitude of rules and traditions, with a particular emphasis on Sabbath observance. However, Jesus demonstrated a reluctance to adhere to these traditions if they deviated from genuine divine principles. His actions challenged the meticulous observance of man-made rules, and one incident that underscored this defiance occurred on the Sabbath, when he healed someone, Mark 3:4-5. The healing on the Sabbath became a flashpoint, highlighting Jesus' deliberate disregard for their traditions. Instead of conforming to their rigid Sabbath norms, he prioritized compassion and the well-being of individuals. This act of healing, though rooted in benevolence, clashed with the religious leaders' meticulous Sabbath regulations, provoking their ire. Moreover, Jesus made a bold statement about the temple, proclaiming its destruction and subsequent rebuilding in 3 days. John 2:13-22. This declaration, veiled in metaphorical language, was a further affront to established religious symbols. The temple held immense significance for the religious leaders, both culturally and spiritually, and Jesus' words challenged their authority and the sanctity they attached to traditional practices. In essence, Jesus' lack of conformity to their traditions, especially regarding the Sabbath, struck a nerve with the religious leaders. His actions and statements dismantled the rigid framework they sought to maintain, leading them to view him as a threat to the established order, ultimately contributing to their decision that Jesus must die. Therefore, Caiaphas and his team, who were pleasant at the time, he was taken to the house of Caiaphas for questioning. After hearing Jesus say, "I am," in response to his inquiry of, "Are you the Messiah?" gave him the green light to approach Pilate and hand Jesus over to be crucified. Caiaphas, the high priest, and other Jewish leaders did not waste much time. They marched Jesus straight to Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor's residence. Their motive was clear. They sought Pilate's approval for Jesus' execution, as Roman authorities held the power of capital punishment. Caiaphas and the leaders accused Jesus of various charges, emphasizing his claim to be the king of the Jews, a title that could be perceived as a challenge to Roman rule. Pilate, however, found no grounds for a serious charge against Jesus. Seeking to evade responsibility, Pilate discovered that Jesus was from Galilee, and therefore under the jurisdiction of Herod Antipas. Herod, upon meeting Jesus, found no fault in him, and sent him back to Pilate. The Roman governor, caught between the pressure from the Jewish leaders and his own reluctance to condemn an innocent man, proposed a compromise. Pilate offered the crowd a choice to release either Jesus or Barabbas, a notorious criminal. Despite Pilate's attempts to spare Jesus, the crowd, influenced by the chief priests, chose to release Barabbas and demanded Jesus' crucifixion. Pilate, symbolically washing his hands to absolve himself of guilt, reluctantly handed Jesus over to be crucified. Jesus endured the agonizing journey to Golgotha, where he was crucified alongside two criminals. Darkness enveloped the land, and Jesus uttered his final words, including the poignant cry, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." Eventually, Jesus breathed his last, marking the culmination of his sacrificial journey for humanity. The crucifixion, a profound moment in Christian theology, represents the redemptive sacrifice of Jesus for the forgiveness of sins. It is commemorated annually during the Christian observance of Good Friday, preceding the celebration of Easter, which signifies the resurrection of Jesus. The Bible does not provide an exact number of days between the time Jesus was captured by the Pharisees and the time of his death. However, based on the gospel narratives, it is generally believed that Jesus was arrested on the night of Maundy Thursday and crucified on Good Friday. This would suggest a span of about 1 day, from Thursday night to Friday afternoon. Keep in mind that the events leading up to Jesus' arrest, including the Last Supper, the prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane, and the subsequent trials, all occurred within a relatively short time frame, according to biblical accounts. Different Christian denominations may have slightly different interpretations of the timeline, based on their traditions and theological perspectives. Also, the exact year of Jesus' death is a subject of historical and scholarly debate, and there isn't a universally agreed upon date. However, it is commonly believed that Jesus was crucified during the first half of the 1st century AD. Scholars often propose a range of years for his crucifixion, with estimates typically falling between 30 and 33 AD. It's important to note that historical records from that period are limited, and dating events precisely are challenging. Now, our final question is, what happened to Caiaphas when Jesus died and was even resurrected? According to the New Testament accounts, when the religious leaders heard about the claim of Jesus' resurrection, they took various actions to suppress the news or discredit the disciples. In the Gospel of Matthew 28:11-15, it is mentioned that the chief priests and elders bribed the soldiers who were guarding the tomb to spread a false story. They instructed the soldiers to say that Jesus' disciples came at night and stole his body while they were sleeping. This fabricated story aimed to counter the growing belief in Jesus' resurrection and to prevent the disciples from spreading the message that Jesus had risen from the dead. Later, as when years passed by, it is recorded that Caiaphas was eventually deposed from the high priesthood. The reasons for his deposition are not entirely clear from historical records, but it's noted that he was removed from his position by the Roman legate Lucius Vitellius the Elder. In Dante Alighieri's literature story called Inferno, Caiaphas is put in a special part of hell for fake people. He has to stay there forever, getting walked on by others, like a path. If you found this episode engaging, please subscribe and share your thoughts on Caiaphas and his group's choices that ultimately led to Jesus' arrest and crucifixion. We have a thought-provoking question for you. Between Jesus and Judas Iscariot, who passed away first? Additionally, what are your beliefs about their encounters thereafter? This intriguing discussion continues as we delve deeper into the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. See you in the next one. Thanks for watching.